Good morning, everyone. We're going to have some fun today. If everybody would take their seats, we'll get started. We've got a huge program today to go through. A lot of exciting speakers. I want to tell you some good things. My name is Jeff Thomas, and welcome to the 11th Annual Orange County Water Summit. I'm a board member with the Municipal Water District of Orange County, and to my left is Steve Sheldon with Orange County Water District. We've had the distinct pleasure of bringing this to you for 11 years, and I've been on here 10 years, and I got to tell you, every year it seems to get better and better, and this year will be no less than that. Of course, when you put this together, and you put together an event like this venue at the Grand Californian, the partners that we have, the Disneyland Resort, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone who made this possible. This takes a lot of work, and what you will see are these great tabletops, the decorations and everything that all the elves did during the night. Let me give you a few names of people, though, that have been very involved and have been very key to making this happen. Frank Delavera, Director of Environmental Affairs with Disney. Is he here? Where are you? Yep. There we go. Debbie Mills, Environmental Project Director. Thank you. Greg Deems and his banquet staff who made the food possible. I did not have a sour berry, so it was great. I got to say, the food's always been really good. That's something we do like. And the entire entertainment staff and the decor and staging and the tireless workers of the staff for MODOC and for OCWD. I want to thank you for the work that you've put into this. This year's summit, Water, What's Beyond the Magic? That's how the water industry professionals make it look. Makes it look kind of easy, doesn't it? Just pours out of the tap. Well, today we're going to be talking about the magic that a lot of hard work has gone into each of the projects and the various things going on throughout the state. We've got speakers from a broad variety of industries and also topics that we're going to be bringing to you today on water delivery. We will focus on infrastructure today, engineering, science, of course that's political science. We've got a couple of people here going to talk politics, which is one of my favorite subjects. And the people are working to ensure that the water magically appears at that faucet every single day. And today we'll hear from panelists helping us to work with us to manage our water supply, prepare for emergencies, discover more resources, and make do with less of them. But before we get into our program, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, Mesa Water. Thank you for being our luncheon sponsor. Irvine Ranch Water District, always thank you very much for being involved as our program sponsor. And all the table, associate, breakfast, exhibitors, and chamber sponsors listed in our program. Thank you all for your support. At this time, nice. At this time, I'd like to invite up our co-chair, Steve Sheldon. He's going to introduce some people. Steve?
Jeff, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure for us to work together for 11 years on these water summits. I think it was a great idea that Jeff and I came up with collectively, and how our two districts have been able to collaborate together. Every year, once the summit is over, we start the planning process in the late summer, and it goes all the way through the fall and then spring, and now we're here, and it is quite a bit of work doing that. There are some directors from the Orange County Water District that I'd like to introduce. Kathy Green and Bruce Whitaker and Roger Yo. Are you here? Thank you. Hold your hands up. Thank you very much. Those are my colleagues on the Orange County Water District. And then from the Municipal Water District, we have Wayne Osborne, the board president, and Brett Brarby. Are you out here? I think so. Oh, there we go, I think. And then we have Larry Dick and Sat T, Big Sat T. And Jeff Thomas is right here. And then Yo Megan. Megan, are you here? All right, I can't see, but I think so. Thank you for the MODOC board is also, as my board, is a very large supporter of this annual event. And then, again, just a particular note to directors Barbary and Yo Schneider, Bilodeau, and Green, who served on our planning committee. We have many elected officials and their staff here today. From the office of Congressman Lou Correa, who's been a longtime office holder in our county, is Claudio Gallegos, the district director. Are you here? I can't see with all these lights in my eyes, so just say yes. Alexandra Gonzalez, who is with the office of Congressman Dana Rohbacher. Yes, okay. I'll just keep going because I apologize. Senator John Morlock, a good friend of mine, is Pasquella Talarico. Yes, great. Eric Weigelin from Senator Pat Bates. And then we have a representative from Assemblymember Tom Daly's office, Norma Kurtz, and from Office of Bill Breaux, Jennifer Beal. So thank you all for coming and representing your great serving and hardworking federal and state legislators who have always been very supportive of the Orange County Water District and the Municipal Water District. At this point, I'd like to ask you to please stand, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can, just join after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For those of you to my right, the flag was right here. I apologize. You couldn't see it, but you knew where it was. You couldn't see it, but you knew where it was at. I think they call that a penumbra, the dark side of the moon. You can't see it, but you know it's there. So one of the big reasons the summit last year was so successful was one person, and that is a famous person here in our Southern California community, and that person who just did a fabulous job. And when we were halfway through the program, we knew that we had to have him back. That is Fritz Coleman, our great comic and great weathercaster from NBC News, KNBC News. He's been there since 1982, and he will be our MC. We're thrilled that he's here. He has the charisma, as I mentioned, the comic relief, the credibility, and we're so pleased that he's agreed again to be the master of ceremonies for this 11th Water Summit. At this time, I would like to bring up Fritz to make a few comments. I want to thank Jeff for all the hard work he and I have done. And so, Fritz Coleman, thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Come on. I know it's about water. Don't make me sing It's a Small World in here this morning. Good morning. Yes, I'll tell you, how many people here are here for the first time? You will find this a spectacularly informative morning. I was here last year and was intimidated by the scientific minds in the room and the political minds and the movers and shakers of the Southern California water issue, and there's nothing more important. But I'll tell you what was fantastic. What you will take out of here is issues that are seen every night on our news and have become topics of conversation. The Twin Tunnels Project, Water Fix, all of the issues up and down the state. The Oroville Dam issue. We heard some really informative stuff from the Army Corps of Engineers last year. And all of the issues discussed here today, even if you're only peripherally involved with water in California, you will find interesting. I did, and I'm so honored to be back this year. I'm honored to be invited back anywhere, honestly. It's a great... And it's really wonderful that I get to celebrate this with you, because yesterday was my 35th anniversary being the weatherman at Channel 4. It's a miracle that anyone could draw a paycheck for 35 years being a weatherman in a city with not a lot of ongoing weather. It might be the greatest scam ever perpetrated in show business. Sometimes I feel like Bernie Madoff with maps. But it's a miracle. We don't have a lot of bad weather in Southern California, and that's why when we do get just a little bit, we weathermen have to exaggerate in order to validate our employment. That's when a tenth of an inch of rain becomes Stormwatch 2018. Let's go out live now to Carolina Hernandez, our drizzle correspondent. Carolina, here we are in the thick of a stage 2 sprinkle advisory. Is it true that people are beginning to drive with their wipers on intermittent? Tell us, how are they coping, Carolina? So I have an interesting job. I have to think up new ways every day to say morning clouds and fog, hazy afternoon sun. That's my whole job. New adjectives, new adverbs. Many people would call it fake news, but I'm very proud of my profession, and I'm so honored to be here today. And now I have to go to the prepared remarks written for me, or as we refer to them, the New Testament. So here we go. I want to thank Jeff and Steve. I want to thank everybody for inviting me back. Just had a wonderful time last year and was able to pass along many of these great ideas for future potential stories about the water issue in California to my coworkers and to people that make those decisions. Behind the magic, so often so many people turn on the faucet, don't give a second thought to about where that water comes from, how far it traveled to get there, and who the professionals are who are responsible for treating and delivering that clean and safe water to their homes and to their businesses. It comes out magically. The people in this room, however, know that it's not as easy as it looks. Now, just a year ago, we were reeling from the aftermath of the worst drought of our lifetimes, a drought that was magically washed away by a winter like we had never seen before. Yet the trials and tribulations of the last drought are very much at the forefront of the discussion and the decisions that we're still making today. Permanent conservation regulations, an issue. The need to invest more in infrastructure and technology, two big issues. And as we sit here today, we're moving towards a better, more reliable water future with projects in the works to ensure that we're able to continue to magically deliver water no matter what weather extremes we face in the future. Today, we'll discuss what lies ahead tomorrow, how regulations will change the way water providers do business, how to deal with water systems that, believe it or not, don't have the magic that we have here in Orange County. That's right, there are places in California that have water supply and water quality issues. What a surprise. What do we do about them? We're going to talk about all this and a lot more. We have some incredible speakers here today. In fact, we could spend all day discussing their resumes and their accomplishments of the various presenters that are here to tackle these issues, but we have included their bios in your program so we can spend less time introducing them and more time actually hearing from them. And they want to hear from you. We're going to have question and answer periods, and we have strategically placed microphones around the room. And if you are fortunate enough to be called after you've been properly vetted by the TSA, you'll step up to a microphone and you'll ask your question at the microphone, not from your seat, because we won't be able to hear you. Now, because we want to ensure there is enough time for all of your questions, our speakers are going to do their best to keep to their allotted time. To help keep us on track, speakers will hear this sound. I know it's deafening. Do we have that? Because we want them to be prepared. That means you have 2 minutes. When you hear this sound, time's up. That's Tinkerbell going. And with that, let's begin. This is section number 1. And we'll title this section, Looking into the Crystal Ball, Forecasting Future Supplies. In this first section, entitled Looking into the Crystal Ball, we're going to hear from Dr. Rob Hartman. He is a consultant who retired as the chief hydrologist from the California-Nevada River Forecast Center. He's got 35 years of federal flood and water supply forecasting experience using the most advanced cutting-edge technology. But before we have Dr. Hartman look into his crystal ball, let's set the stage with a look at your local water forecast. Hi, Fritz Coleman here to give you your water forecast for California and beautiful Orange County. El Nino, La Nina, above average precipitation, below average snowpack. From one extreme to another, we've seen it all this past year. This time last year, after a record winter, people were enjoying a summer on the slopes in Mammoth. Yes, people were still skiing in June. And just a few months ago, we were flirting once again with the threat of drought. But then March proved to be something just short of a miracle, pushing the needle somewhere close to normal and saving the state from what could have been a disastrous water year. Speaking of normal, do we even know what normal is anymore? I mean, it seems that the new normal is firefighting at Christmas and managing floods and mudslides during spring break. An April Pineapple Express doused the northern part of the state with a few 100,000 acre-feet lost into the ocean. It's a story we've heard before. All things considered, though, storage accounts are looking pretty good. On the heels of last year's record for putting water in the bank for those not-so-rainy days, as of now, all of the state's key reservoirs are at or above average. And it doesn't look like we're going to dip into those reserve accounts too much this year. The truth of the matter is, California has a storage and delivery problem. A big part of the solution, the California water fix. 1 tunnel, 2 tunnels, no tunnels. For a while, it looked like the water fix would be derailed. Now, though, there is light at the end of both tunnels. Recently, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, with a huge lift from the Municipal Water District of Orange County, also known as MoDOC, and the Orange County delegation rallied enough votes to bankroll the California water fix. The Twin Tunnel project will be the linchpin in ensuring reliable deliveries from the north to the south for generations to come. This move by Metropolitan clears a huge hurdle for the project, which still faces dozens of legal battles ahead. So if you ever wanted to go to law school, you still can and probably graduate in time to litigate the water fix, which will take at least 15 years before water is flowing through the pipes. Even still, projected at $17 billion, it's a good deal for Orange County and the rest of the state. MoDOC's study deemed the Twin Tunnels the single most cost-effective, large-scale project for the long-term imported water supply reliability. Worst-case scenario for your water bill, a gradual rise to about $4.80 per household over the next 15 years to pay for this critical infrastructure. And that's assuming the Central Valley farmers don't buy into the project. While we're on the topic of infrastructure, Phase 2 of the repairs on the Oroville Dam spillway are underway with a goal to complete construction before November 2018. Wasn't that a daunting scene just a year ago? Thankfully, no lives were lost, and there were many lessons learned. Part of the wake-up call of the Oroville incident was an up-close and personal look at the combination of aging infrastructure and the greater intensity of weather events that we can expect to experience here in California. All the state's infrastructure is being examined to ensure it can withstand the new storm events presented by extreme changes in weather. As Oroville showed us, this is not just important for managing water deliveries, but also critical to protecting public safety. At the local level, the Orange County Water District, or OCWD, approved moving forward with building the final expansion of the groundwater replenishment system, also known as GWRS. Design is underway, and the $240 million project is expected to be completed by early 2023. When it comes online, the GWRS will be producing enough water for 1 million people. GWRS water is used to replenish the Orange County groundwater basin, managed by OCWD. Let's take a look now at basin storage levels. This past winter was one of the driest on record. Rainfall in Orange County was only around 4 inches, which is less than a third of average conditions. With such a dry winter, you would have expected water storage levels in the groundwater basin to have fallen significantly. However, thanks to an agreement brokered by MWDOC, MoDOC, a large amount of imported water from Northern California and the Colorado River was purchased and recharged this past year into the groundwater basin, which has more than offset the effects of the dry winter, resulting in a net increase in groundwater storage supplies for the region. OCWD has estimated the groundwater basin will be about 43% full by the end of the fiscal year. And while we're talking record books, earlier this year, OCWD made the record books, literally to celebrate the 10th anniversary of GWRS. The Orange County Sanitation District and OCWD set a Guinness World Record for turning more than 100 million gallons of wastewater into drinkable water in 24 hours. Now, while we celebrate Orange County's continued excellence in water innovation, leadership, and sustainability, it's hard to believe there are actually parts of the state where clean, safe, reliable water doesn't just magically flow out of the tap. It's true, and it's worse than you think. There are still more than 300 small water systems in the state, some privately owned, that chronically serve contaminated drinking water or cannot provide reliable water service. Something must be done. Some say raise taxes to build a fund that will be used to bring these systems up to code. Others propose to merge these systems with larger ones that have the management experience and the resources to better serve those communities. One thing is for certain, more people are thinking about water a lot more than they were just a decade ago. Now, as the pendulum swings from high temperatures and dry climate to mild temperatures and wet climate, voters will have the opportunity to vote on possibly 2 water bond measures this year. A $4 billion bond for parks and water infrastructure improvements will appear on the June 5th ballot, and an $8.9 billion measure for improvements to California's water quality systems and watersheds and protection of natural habitats is eligible for the statewide ballot in November. So, folks, what's in store for next year? Continued extreme weather conditions, more storage and infrastructure projects that will cost billions of dollars and will most certainly help secure reliable water supplies for the state, and many fights over who's going to pay for these projects. And while the forecast seems a little foggy for California, here in Orange County, residents and businesses can sleep a little easier knowing that local water reliability has been a top priority for the water and wastewater agencies serving the region. Now it's back to you, Orange County, to continue to use water wisely and invest in cutting-edge projects that are setting the bar for other communities in the state and around the world. And now the real knowledgeable person. Please welcome Dr. Rob Hartman, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to talk to you folks. I hadn't been to one of these before. I'm really impressed by the setting and the number of people. It's wonderful. So what I'm going to speak to you about this morning is leveraging the skill that we have in weather and water forecasts into better managing our water resources infrastructure. And there's got to be a clicker here, right? Okay, hope this works. Beautiful. Okay, so here's the basic problem is that we have a growing population. We all know that. There's certainly a lot of people in Southern California. Our climate is quite variable, particularly in California. I'm going to mention and show you a graphic on that in a moment that will kind of bring that home, and that variability leads to unreliability. And then the notion of building a whole bunch of new reservoirs across the state or across the West really just isn't in the cards. We don't have the locations to put them. They're extremely expensive. There's lots of environmental hurdles to deal with, and it takes a long time to do that. So if you look at variability of annual precipitation across the country, you can see that Southern California is right in the center of the most variable climate in the country. And it's really no wonder that when water policies, et cetera, are made on the East Coast, they don't really understand what goes on in the West, where in the East, a wet year is 110% of average, and a dry year is 90% of average. And as Fritz mentioned just a few moments ago, this year was like 30% of average in Southern California, and a wet year can be 300% of average. So there's wide variability in the West, and you can see that even for the source regions where Southern California imports its water supply, those regions aren't dramatically better either. They still have a great deal of variability, and we need to learn how to use our water resources infrastructure more effectively. So what do? We got to get more out of it, and that's really one of the only alternatives. There's lots of ways of saving water and making better use of things, but we really need to make sure that our significant infrastructure is leveraged and made the best possible use of. So you may not have noticed this quite as bit in Southern California. We don't have that much weather, but if you think about it, skill in weather forecasting has really improved quite a bit. Fritz said he's been at this for 35 years. 35 years ago, Fritz would have had no confidence in making a forecast more than a couple of days in advance because the models just simply weren't that good. There weren't satellites flying around collecting all kinds of data, and it just wasn't that reliable. There's been massive investments in weather prediction worldwide by not just the United States, but other countries as well. And as this graphic shows, you can see that the skill, and in this case, a 1-inch precipitation made for 1, 2, and 3 days in advance, is steadily improving. And we need to be able to leverage that skill in making better decisions associated with how we manage our water resources infrastructure. The other notion that is rather contemporary, Fritz mentioned Pineapple Express. That's kind of the old term for what's now called atmospheric rivers. Up in Northern California, where I live, the weathercasters are using atmospheric rivers in their newscasts all the time, and that's really been pretty unheard of. What this really is it's the transport of water vapor from the tropics up to more northern latitudes. That's how it all happens. And in these images that you see here, the darker, warmer colors show that passage of water vapor up to the coast, and most of our storms that we get in California are related, the big storms are related to these atmospheric rivers. And in truth, a dry year is marked by not too many atmospheric rivers, and a very wet year where water supplies are plentiful is marked by lots of atmospheric rivers. So it's almost a matter of how frequent these things are as to whether we're in a drought or we're in a flood year. And these ARs can transport a ton of water, and as shown here from this 2006 image, that AR was transporting up to 25 times the volume of the Mississippi River as water vapor, but not just as liquid. This is the wrong presentation. My apologies. So I'm going to skip some slides because I realized in only 10 minutes I can't go through 25 slides, so that's really hard to do. So this has been thinned out a bit. So enter forecast-informed reservoir operations. This is the notion of taking the skill that we have in weather and water forecasts and really putting that to maximum use in making reservoir management decisions. You would think, well, aren't our reservoir operators doing this right now anyway? And the answer is no. Our water resources infrastructure was engineered and constructed in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when forecast skill was really quite limited. And the procedures that were developed principally by the Army Corps of Engineers to manage the flood control space don't consider forecasts in that process. Well, the forecasts have gotten better, and it's about time to think about how do we integrate the skill into making better decisions about how we manage that flood control space for multiple purposes. There are several projects that are going on in the West at this time. We have a project up at Lake Mendocino in Sonoma County that's been going on for several years. If you drink wine, you know all about the Russian River. And we've started just this last year a project for Prado Reservoir here in Orange County, and there are plans to expand that. So I'm going to skip through these slides that I cut out earlier. Here you see Lake Mendocino. It's actually in Mendocino County, but it drains into the Russian River. It's owned and operated by the Corps of Engineers, and the water supply component is operated by the Sonoma County Water Agency. The notion there is that if we get these big storms that put water into the flood pool, and then you can see in the forecast that there's nothing coming, are you really compelled to release that water? Or maybe it's the last storm of the season, and you hang on to it, and it can improve your water supply reliability for the remainder of the season. So that's the notion of that project there. This project team, we formed a interagency steering committee with representatives from the Corps of Engineers, the USGS, NOAA, Sonoma County Water Agency, the Bureau of Reclamation, and some others. And they put together a preliminary viability assessment that clearly demonstrated that if you use the existing forecast, you can save quite a bit of water, and like 30%, and improve the reliability of water supply for the folks that are depending on that. And this graphic kind of shows that for the different sort of scenarios run. And the notion is that we can build new water control manuals that not only leverage this skill, but are constructed in a fashion that can continuously import and leverage new technology as it develops. We have a lot to learn in science. We're not obviously done figuring out how to predict the weather. And so we want to create an environment where we can continuously integrate that new science into our procedures. So moving this project down to Orange County under the leadership of the Orange County Water District. This project began just this fall. You see the basin there. If you're not familiar with Prado Dam and Reservoir, it's not a water supply reservoir. It's a flood control reservoir. It was authorized by Congress and constructed to protect downstream residents from flooding. But there's a small pool in the bottom of the reservoir that's called a buffer pool, and water is released out of that buffer pool at a rate that can be recharged into the groundwater below that. So the Prado project is really to make better use of that buffer pool, make it maybe a little bit larger, and then make sure that you can release it at a rate that can be recharged into the downstream aquifer as a function of what's coming in the weather. Because if you see that there's a big storm coming, maybe you've got to let the water go out at a rate that's a little bit faster than you would have otherwise. It's a very good project, and it's very different from the Lake Mendocino project, but certainly trend-setting. You can see the recharge areas below Prado Reservoir in the downstream basin there. We're going to skip through these in the interest of time and get to this. So we just started with phase one. Again, an interagency steering committee has been formed. We've had a couple of meetings, and we put together the technical support team. The project is then developing a work plan to develop the viability of implementing forecast-informed reservoir operations for Prado Reservoir. And it's a great deal of credit to Orange County Water District for having the leadership to initially support that project, and it's very, very good. And I think that this sort of application doesn't apply to everywhere. It depends on what the attributes of the reservoir systems are. If you have downstream conveyances, they can't handle a lot of water coming out, but there are a fair number of reservoirs in California and elsewhere in the West that could benefit from this technology, and I know that the Bureau of Reclamation has several prototype projects that are working on this as well. So thank you, and I guess we'll do some question and answer.
Doctor, come on over. Interesting stuff. Have a seat. That was awesome. I feel like I'm your therapist. I'm sorry, we're out of time. That'll be $250.
Okay, no problem.
I want to ask you about one of your graphics that was fascinating, the Prado project. What they do is they sense how much groundwater can be absorbed, and that is what dictates how much they release from upstream of the dam. How do they know how full the groundwater is? How are those measurements done?
So there are a number of settling basins below Prado Reservoir that the Water District maintains, right? And they divert water out of the channel into those. And over time, they can measure how fast the water percolates.
Is it
out
done
of
with like electronic beams, or is there an actual physical measurement? Or I'm just
No, I think
curious.
you can tell by the rate at which it settles in the ponds.
Oh,
how
okay.
much. And so I believe at the early part of the season, they can percolate about 700, 750 cubic feet per second into the groundwater table. But then as the season progresses, there'll be siltation in those settling basins, and it'll drop to 400 or 450 cubic feet per second. So the notion is that you want to release water out of Prado at a rate that can be taken advantage of in the groundwater recharge basins below that. And anything above that just goes out to the ocean.
Talking about the beginning of your talk about the unpredictability of weather, I would like to invite you to come and do that presentation for my boss.
Yeah.
But with the unpredictability of it, and with the huge extremes, you know, the occasional sort of semi-drought conditions, and then you have an atmospheric river where they get 6 or 8 inches of rain over 3 or 4 days in Northern California. So does that make even more valuable California Water Fix and the twin tunnels? Do you think that will be a way that we'll be able to control the wide extremes in weather in California and the water distribution?
Yeah, I'm not sure, you know, well, certainly, you know, the notion of extremes is something that we're just all kind of living with. I think the variability in the climate has been pretty pronounced over the last 20 years. I mean, it's just like you said, I don't know what normal is anymore. It's just somewhere in the middle that we never really experience. I'm not sure exactly how the water fix, will ties into extremes, other than, you know, it certainly improves the reliability of the conveyance to Southern California, because as we know, the Delta is a pretty fragile system that was never really engineered to be a conveyance to begin with. So.
But maybe what I mean is the upstream flooding and those things. When we had a couple of Northern California atmospheric rivers this year that delivered like 10, 12 inches of rain over 3 or 4 days. Will that sort of ease the flood potential, the Delta and northward, you think, or no?
Now, I mean, the reservoirs are managed in a fashion that there should be adequate flood control space in all the Corps of Engineers or Section 7 reservoirs to be able to handle that. And unless we get an event that is of, you know, 100-year variety or something quite very, very extreme, then it's rare for reservoirs to spill. So last winter, I believe New Don Pedro spilled quite briefly in the San Joaquin, but that's a fairly rare occurrence. So I'm not sure what the connection really is between the water fix and flood mitigation. I'm not sure that there really is one. I think it's more related to water supply reliability.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, we want to line some people up at microphones, but while we do that, I just want to ask you one more question while we give people a chance to queue up at our various, I think there are 2 microphones. So you said that we don't have the time or the money to build more reservoirs, but do we need to come up with other ways for storage, both north and south of the Delta? How do we fight that problem, not having time or not wanting to raise taxes anymore?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you look at all of the potential reservoir sites across California, the good ones have all been built. I mean, even in the Prop 1 proposals, the Sites Reservoir is an off-stream project in the Upper Sacramento system, and that's like 1.8 million acre-feet, and Temperance Flat, I think, in the San Joaquin is only 500,000 acre-feet. So it's really not that much. It's a matter of, do you have a good place to build a reservoir, and do you have the water to put in it? And so neither of those 2 things are really all that plentiful in California. So I think it's a matter of using what we have smarter. And like I said, this forecast-informed reservoir operations is certainly one way to do that without pouring any concrete.
Great. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I had a question. Mike?
We have an audience mic here on the left side.
No.
There he is.
Working? Okay.
We got you now.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Fox, Irvine City Council member, and I'm appointed to SARPA, the Santa Ana River Project Board, that manages Prado Dam and the infrastructure. So it's very interesting to hear about the FIRO models and how to continue to even better preserve our resources. I'm not sure if we're the entity that would be responsible for setting any kind of release policy, but we're certainly the entity that deals with the infrastructure. So you said somebody would be able to make decisions that would help us save resources on the Prado Dam based on weather predictions. Who would we reach out to, and how would we be able to do that?
Yeah, so the LA District of the Army Corps of Engineers makes the operational decisions for Prado Reservoir today, and they will continue to do that in the future. But they're working very closely with Orange County Water District to ensure that the release rates remain at or below the rates that can be recharged into the groundwater basin below that. And they're very much a partner in this Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations initiative that we're currently pursuing.
So the second part would be, how can we support that as a board?
Talk to your congressman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, that ultimately, I mean, Orange County Water District is supplying the initial kind of kickstart for this project. For this to really go to, you know, full implementation, will take an appropriation from Congress.
Thanks.
Anyone else? We would like to achieve
Yes.
symmetry. Anybody on this side of the room? Where, did I hear somebody?
Over on this.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Nicholas Dibbs from Garden Grove, California. I'm a science teacher and former DWR water education coordinator and tour coordinator for the State Water Project. I want to follow up on a question that I asked last year of a different speaker, which is, if you could please put on your hat coming from NOAA on addressing the climate change issue, because those of us here in Orange County are very dependent on the seawater intrusion issue as it would impact also the Delta. And so what goes on at the Antarctica and the increase in atmospheric temperature, what do you see on the horizon? Our sea level, do you see it increasing or staying the same, or addressing climate change, please?
Great question.
It is a great question, and fortunately for me and unfortunately for you, I'm not a climatologist. So I can't give you a clear answer on that. I think that, you know, there are lots of opinions that surround that entire issue. But Fritz, what's your sense?
Well, I'll tell you, we just did a story about the vulnerability of the coastline, and we used some graphics, these graphics that sort of go out into the future and model what the coastline and the most vulnerable cities in the coastline, Playa del Rey and Venice and some of those spots that are lower. And it's already happened, and it's happening faster than the earlier forecasts were. And I wish I could give you an exact website, but the Scripps is doing some great work with that, as is USC has gotten a mandate from some private industry to look at it. Is the California coastal flood potential. I always get into people think that I know more than I do, being a television weathercaster, and they say, well, what's your opinion about climate change? And I'll say, here's what I know, and here is the data that I deal with every day, and that is that every single record in weather forecasting in the last 10 years, since we've been keeping records, has been broken. Extremes in temperature, extremes in numbers of hurricanes, extremes in severity of tornado outbreaks, the numbers of snowstorms, the depth of snowstorms. Every single record we've had over the last 10 years has been broken. And I mean, not just one-time anomalies, but if you look at the graphs, we're far overblowing some of these records, and so we need to pay attention. Now, I'm not in a position to get into a big political argument as to how much is man-made and how much is cyclical, millennial, you know, weather change, but I do know it's changing because we're seeing, you know, there was a period of time there where some meteorologists from the National Weather Service didn't even think that something like Superstorm Sandy could occur, where you had two lows that combined to become this big superstorm. So all bets are off. We're learning something new every year. So we do need to pay attention to it. Great question, though. Time's up. Tinkerbell's not happy. Give Dr. Hartman a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Very interesting.